Iran has launched missiles at a US airbase in Qatar as a response to the weekend strikes on its nuclear sites by the US. The Iranian military said the attack was devastating and powerful, but US officials said no personnel were killed or injured in the strike. Qatari authorities said the missiles were intercepted and said the security situation tonight was stable. Several airlines cancelled flights to the region, while Kuwait and Bahrain both temporarily closed their airspace.
The retaliation Iran had promised. Explosions were heard and missiles seen over Doha tonight as Iran's military launched its attack on the US airbase in Qatar. The country's defence minister said it intercepted all missiles directed at the Al Udeid airbase, the largest US military installation in the Middle East. The base serves as the headquarters for all US air operations in the region and hosts nearly 8,000 American troops. Washington said there were no casualties. Qatar has called the strikes a flagrant violation of sovereignty, saying it reserves the right to respond in accordance with international law. Reports claimed that Tehran had warned Doha about the incoming strikes. It comes after Donald Trump ordered US bombardment of Iran's nuclear facilities over the weekend, including the underground Fordo nuclear site. The UN nuclear watchdog said it likely sustained serious damage. Earlier in the day, Israel launched its most intense bombing of the Iranian capital, with notorious Evin jail, which holds political prisoners, among the targets. Both the US and Israel have been hinting at the possibility of the regime change in Iran.
There is no scenario where Iran can have a nuclear weapon. We've made very clear when it comes to Iran, our objective is not regime change, but that may be the byproduct.
In Moscow, Iran's foreign minister heard from President Vladimir Putin that the US strikes had no justification. Amid the escalation, countries in the Gulf region have shut down their airspace. Tanya Royd, RTÉ News.
We're joined now by Michael Brady, who's chairman of the GAA in Qatar and has been living there for 10 years. And Michael, you were there for tonight's attack. Can you take us through what you saw and heard?
Yes, Ray. So I was actually driving home with my wife. We were coming back to the house. There had been some awareness on social media that this was coming. As we were driving a few minutes from the house, we noticed these loud bangs and thuds. So we turned around and were able to see all the rockets in the sky. So we quickly came back to the house, and there had been a warning for people to seek shelter. And then when we looked out, when we did get back to the house, we were able to see a lot of interceptions from the Qatar military defense systems. So a lot of the shrapnel was falling in the vicinity of the residential area. We're not too far from the base itself. So it was quite alarming, to be fair. But at least now everybody's safe and sound, and we understand there's no casualties.
And Qatar, in many ways, a world away from the tensions that often affect the Middle East. But how concerned are people now in this current phase of what's happening?
I think there's just because of recent occurrences, obviously with the US and the Iranian situation, there certainly is apprehension in the area. A lot of people would have been travelling home for this in the next week or so. So I think people will try to, if the airspace opens again, they'll be trying to maybe get some earlier flights. But hopefully things will settle down, and this is an isolated incident. We're not too sure, but hopefully it is.
And what have Qatari authorities been saying? You say there were some warnings. Was there some indication this was going to happen?
It was more on social media, where there was a few messages came out from different embassies asking people to go and take shelter. Specifically, I think the American and the British. And then there was, on the back of that, other people were seeing those messages and then finishing work early and leaving to go and take that shelter. So it seemed like it was quite coordinated and choreographed.
OK, very good, Michael. Thank you indeed for joining us from Doha tonight. Let's go to Washington now and speak to our correspondent, Sean Whelan. Sean, how is this attack being received in the United States today, and any responses yet from the Trump White House?
There is, Ray, in the last couple of minutes, just after we came on air, President Trump posted on social media saying that the Iranians have made what he called a very weak response, that they fired 14 missiles, one for each of those so-called bunker buster bombs that the Americans had dropped on Iran. at the weekend. He said the US forces had shot down 13 of them. Nobody was hurt, and he said hardly any damage was done. Now, some satellite photographs that have been released in the past hour seem to suggest that American aircraft based at Al Udeid Air Base had been moved since the start of the Israeli attacks on Iran, so it's not surprising that there was nothing done. He said that the Americans were expecting the attack, and says, "I want to thank Iran for giving us early notice, which made it possible for no lives to be lost and nobody to be injured. Perhaps Iran can now proceed to peace and harmony in the region, and I will enthusiastically encourage Israel to do the same," he says. This is the most up-to-date thing we have from the Trump administration. Obviously, there had been some indications earlier that they knew something was afoot, something was going to happen in Qatar. That emergency notification last night that national security advisors were going to be called into the White House to meet with the president this afternoon was an indication that something was going to happen, and so it did happen. Now the question is, as the Iranians having gotten it out of their system, as President Trump put it, what do they do next? Do they move down a diplomatic track? And that is something that the president seems to be opening a door to here with that statement, saying he wants to see peace in the region. So a negotiated settlement, there is now a window of opportunity there. It's also interesting, I think, that the Iranian foreign minister is in Moscow today, having met with President Putin. The Iranians had been supplying weaponry to the Russians for use in their war on Ukraine. Now perhaps President Putin, who is under pressure in that war, will want to curry favour with the Americans and may become himself the back channel, or maybe in the front channel, for opening potentially a diplomatic route towards ending this conflict between the United States and Iran in ways that all sides can claim some kind of honour and retreat from armed conflict with a diplomatic agreement. Perhaps, or perhaps it'll all go wrong once again. Who knows? Ray?
Yes, indeed. Sean Whelan in Washington, thank you for the update.